Here we are, and it's Off the Shelf Book Talk with Book Lovers, and I'm Kate Johnson, and this is my co-host, Elizabeth Nelson. So tell me, Elizabeth, what are you reading?
Well, I recently finished a couple books in a series. So I'm going to tell you, so the series is called The Wayward Children. And the first book in this series is Every Heart a Doorway, and it's by Seanan McGuire. It's Seanan. Seanan?
I think so,
Okay.
something like that. Or
So
we'll pretend.
We'll pretend I know what I'm talking about. I should write out these names phonetically when I'm going to read them. I always mean to, and then I run out of time, so I give up. But so Every Heart a Doorway. I listened to this on audiobook, and I think it was just like 5-6 hours. These are pretty short books to get through. So The Wayward Children takes place at a private school, and all of the kids that have attended this private school are children who are similar to Alice in Wonderland. They have found hidden doors and traveled through them and gone to these alternate worlds, like Wonderland or different places. And then for whatever reason, they have come back. And, you know, so these are all kids that their parents don't understand what's happened to them, and they're trying to go back from where they came from, so they all go to this school to help them get more adjusted back to being normal. Not wherever they were for however long they were. And so you have different kids who have gone to like fairy worlds, or kids who have gone to underworlds, and everywhere in between. Someone went to a place called Candyland where everything was made out of cotton candy. And so it's everything that happens when a new student arrives and things start going strange. So it was interesting. I would classify this probably as young adult, but because I think some things are a little disturbing with what happens with some of these kids when they went through these doors, so I wouldn't recommend it for super young audiences, but it was an interesting way to think about it, because you always hear about the kids that go through the doorway, but you never really hear about what happens after they come back.
Oh.
And then the second book
in the series
is called Down Among the Sticks and Bones, and it actually follows, and it's the second book in the series, but it would be considered more of a prequel because it tells the story of two of the kids that came back. And so this one tells the story of two sisters named Jack and Jill, went up the hill, all that stuff, who went to their world, and it tells the story of why they got sent back. And that one, again, please be a mature person to read this one, because I mean they're very interesting. It's more of a I don't know if I'd call it a forward-thinking book, but the characters, you have a variety of sexual orientations, different lifestyle choices, and that kind of stuff as well. So with that, that's why I guess I would say it's more of a mature theme.
Sure.
And then I don't know that I was listening to the third book, and then it did the disappear from the library app that my books do when I forget about them. So the second one, it's another person shows up from another world at this school, and it's how they deal with it. I think it's a very interesting series, but going through and reading about the different books that are coming out, I'm having kind of a hard time finding the timeline, because like I said, the first book came out, and then the second book is this prequel. And then looking at the blurbs for the next ones, the third book would take place after the first book.
I hate
but then
that.
The fourth book is another prequel for a character that actually dies in the first book. So, I mean,
too much work. Why do authors do that?
I don't know. I wish I did. But I mean, it's one of those things where it's like, that would kind of fit into kind of the hodgepodge world they're trying to say there is with all these kids that have been traveling, and, you know, time is different and everything for these. But at the same time, it's like, you write the books, you can write the prequels after. Everybody else does this. Hollywood does it too. You have your normal books, and then you add the prequels in. Yep. And then change everything for the original ones.
It's too hard to go flipping back and forth, I think.
Well, and it was the same thing, you know, I've harped and harped about Game of Thrones, and I'm probably going to continue to do it until he actually gets those books written. But, you know, we're waiting forever for these new books, but he can write a prequel that he releases, which I haven't read. But, so I've been kind of working through those, but I started listening to third, and like I said, it went back. But that was mostly because I listened to the prequel for Jack and Jill. I kind of forgot about who everybody was from the first book, because none of the people from the first book except these two were in it.
Yeah, that's always a problem. And I can't remember who's who, and yeah.
There's a lot of books where I feel like I need to like have a blackboard and I can go in and connect how everybody knows everybody.
Yeah,
like
well,
a big
it does.
pie chart.
It does become convoluted when you've got prequels and, you know, sandwiched in.
Well, I can remember in high school we were reading Great Expectations in one of my classes, and the teacher actually had everybody drew a pie chart, and you had to connect how all the characters were interconnected. It was supposed to help you understand the story. It might have worked. I don't know.
I do think sometimes, though, it does. There are books, though, that'll list all the characters in the beginning, and I kind of like that because then I can flip back.
Well, that's why with the series like Game of Thrones, I had to switch to the paperbacks, because I originally started reading it on Kindle, and then I kept getting lost when I would try to flip back in the appendix to be like, okay, who is this person? And then I would lose my page. So I was like, I'm just buying the actual books, and then I can flip as much as I need to.
Yeah, see, again, that's so much work. Why do they do that?
I'll never know.
Game of Thrones has a ton of characters, too, right?
Yeah.
So there's a lot of flipping.
Can be.
Yeah.
What about you? What have you been reading? We'll get off of my tangent over
I'm
here.
yawning, my gosh. Well, my big one I've read is How About the Life-Changing Magic of Tidying Up by Marie Kondo.
Ah.
The funny thing about this is, how old is that book? Like 4 or 5 years, maybe?
She has a show on Netflix now, too.
Yeah, and I never read it when it came out.
Okay.
But it was available in the library app.
Okay.
And I thought, well, you know, I ought to read this. You know, just to see what people, better late than never, right? And I have to say that I did like her writing. And I do agree with a lot of the things she said, because I tend not to be much of a keeper. So I like her idea of minimalism and you know, that you should be surrounded by things you love, not just possessions.
Yeah.
And I think that's true, because if I actually stood there and said, do I love this? Chances are I don't. Like 99%. The only thing I probably love is my cat. You know, the rest.
And your Kindle.
Yeah, my Kindle too. And beyond that, I'm pretty flexible, you know?
Yeah. It's funny that you bring this up, because it was posted again in one of my book groups this morning, but so she had her Netflix series, and it says, you know, you should only keep like 30 books.
Yeah.
Then everybody comments like, on my nightstand, you know, like, or we don't need that negativity in our lives, because some people have like
thousands,
huge libraries of books, and I'm always like, because every time my husband Tom will say, you know, you have so many books, I will pull up one of these people and be like, you can't complain about how many books I have. These people have whole rooms that are books.
Yeah, you know, that's kind of how I was when I moved into my place. I mean, I had books in the kitchen pantry. I had books, you know, not in the oven, but almost. And that's when Kindle came out. And I was able to just get rid of 90% of those books. You know, because so many of them I truly wouldn't read again. But, you know, you sort of keep books because they're books.
Yeah.
And I loaded the whole works up, took it to the library, donated them, and really have never looked back. In fact, just the other day after reading this book, I was looking in my closet and I thought, there's a whole row of books that I bet I could get rid of. And there's a certain satisfaction that comes from getting rid of things.
See, I have to think long and hard about getting rid of a book. I have to think, because like, well, now I try to keep only books that I know I'll read again. Like, I have some that I want to read with Alex when he's older, so I have some of those set away. But then there are just some books that you just kind of feel at home with the characters, and I'm like, well, I want to keep those, because it's like going home. When you, especially when you, if you read like a really long series, you've invested so much of yourself in those books that it's just kind of comforting to have them there. Or I sound really crazy and nerdy for saying that probably. But.
No, I actually, there's books that I haven't, like I read the Guernsey Literary Society probably once a year.
Well, I mean, and then I have books that I keep because they have a sentimental value. Like I have Mom's copy of Homer Price books.
Oh, those are probably my copies.
Well, they're mine now. I have all of your Jupiter Jones and the Three Investigators series, Alfred Hitchcock's Three Investigators
series. Those are worth money. Do not ever sell those.
I am not selling those. Those stay where they are, and I also have.
They are hard to find. Those are really hard to find.
I have an old copy of The Mouse and the Motorcycle that I don't think I've read since I read it the first time. But they're just ones that, you look at them on the shelf and you can remember. And I like the Jupiter Jones ones because I open up the cover of every single one, and there in big letters it says K. Johnson with your big signature in them.
Buy books.
Yeah, I can understand where some people it's, I don't have it. And I mean, for me too, like when we were moving and I boxed up all my books and I didn't have any books in the house while we were moving, it felt so strange. And I don't think it didn't feel like we'd moved back in until the bookshelves came back in and I could unpack those boxes. Once those boxes were unpacked and I could see the books in my living room, then it was like, okay, now I am home. It's sort of like, you'll see the post, a house without books is not a home. And I that really does think is kind of true with me. If I don't see those books, it doesn't really feel like mine, I guess.
I have a few. I have a couple bookcases full of books, but
yeah,
I have 2,000 on my Kindle, so that might explain it.
Yeah, but some of them I keep more because it's represents something, and some are just, you got them to market, and or like I have one that I have a whole big, huge, thick, complete works of Shakespeare that when I've read Shakespeare, it has never been out of this big, thick book, but I can remember, I think Dad brought me down to Mankato for something for college, and we went to Barnes & Noble, and he told me I could pick something out off of that table, and I picked that book up, and he bought it for me. And so that's why I'll always keep that book, because it's a book that Dad bought for me, and I have that memory from it. So
it's about more than just the book.
It's more than just the books. Yeah.
But that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that.
Mm-hmm. Well, and I mean, yeah. So, and like I always think it's fun when you pick up a book at a sale and like somebody else has signed in the front. Or there are some people that when they sell books, they'll leave little notes in them. Mm-hmm. So people have posted pictures of those online too, where they find it and it's like, please don't read the next chapter without Kleenexes.
Oh.
Or like leaving little notes about like, can you believe this? And
yeah.
So
that's good.
Yeah. But yeah, so that's my little I love books.
Well,
talk.
I think that Marie Kondo does say that, that's a personal thing, the books.
Oh, yeah.
And some people have more, some have less. But her whole point is keep it if you love it. Mm-hmm. If you don't love it. The other thing, she's got this way of folding things, T-shirts, for instance, and they're vertical in your drawer. And it just, I don't know, I saw a friend of mine post on Facebook one day that she had done that. Uh-huh. Folded them all and showed how nice it looked. And I just thought, oh man, I'm not that crazy.
No, and I can also tell you that unless you're going to wash every shirt every day, you're going to pull out like a week's worth and half of them are going to tip over. And then you got to push them all up.
I don't think that happens to Marie Kondo.
Well, then Marie Kondo doesn't have a 3-year-old because then she would not do that with that.
Well, I don't know. It just seemed to me thinking, okay.
I barely have time to regularly fold clothes, let alone learn something.
Yeah, this little gadget that you lay on things. I don't know. It just seemed to me like I would screw that up big time, and I would end up throwing it away, and
the machine would not bring me any joy.
Yeah,
and I would have to throw it.
There would be no joy with that. No, in fact, it'd be very frustrating.
Oh gosh.
So what else are you reading?
Let's see here. I read a book called The Last Romantics by Tara Conklin. I didn't have very good luck in finding books that I really liked. And this one, I just think I thought it was going to be a lot different than it was. It turned out to be You know, you see Last Romantic, you're like, oh, it's going to be like a couple novel. It's going to be one of these light reads. Not a light read.
Oh.
It turned into one of those following a family type epics. And so, I mean, it really it follows this mom and her three children. I think it's 3 children, so 2 girls and a boy. And it's everything that happens to them after the father dies. And
None of it's good, I'm sure.
No, and I mean, it all kind of focuses around how everyone is reacting to, I think there's 3 girls actually now that I think about it, 3 girls and a boy, and everything, how that event changes their brother, and it's everything that kind of spirals around his story, and his story is not a happy story. So, I mean, it's one of those where I kept reading it like hoping there was going to be a silver lining, and the silver lining stayed in the cloud. Just more rain.
It sounds sort of like I just finished reading Ellen Hildebrand's sequel to, it's called What Happens in Paradise.
Okay.
Just came out a couple weeks ago. And it's a sequel to Winter in Paradise. And the protagonist is Irene Steele, and she's a magazine editor, like a lifestyle magazine editor, and she's redone this Victorian home that's perfect in Iowa City, and she has this life and this husband and 2 grown sons, and all is well, and a grandson. And she gets a call on New Year's Day that her husband's been killed in a helicopter accident in the Caribbean. Well,
Yeah.
A, what is he doing in the Caribbean? He's not supposed to be in the Caribbean. So she is just, and then the company he works for, they went ahead and cremated the body. And there's just all these red flags going up. So Irene hops a plane and goes to the Caribbean and discovers her husband, Russ, had a mistress and has a daughter and owned a 9-bedroom mansion. And all of a sudden, Irene is just really wondering what's going on, especially when the FBI comes calling and saying, hello, we need to talk.
Yeah.
And so the first book kind of sets up this whole thing. And then the second book, Irene's sons, Cash and Baker, go with her, and they go and they're trying to figure things out. And the brothers fall in love with the same woman, and the mom's trying to find her way, and the FBI is sniffing around big time because they just found $125,000 in the bottom of a drawer. And so there's all this going on. And so the second book was sort of anticlimactic because it's sort of a holding pattern. The first book was really, you know, kind of over the top because it set up this crazy scene. The second one is just more of the same.
Okay.
So the third book will probably be good next year when it brings it all together and you find out, was Russ murdered?
Or it might just be another holding pattern to get you to the 4th book.
No, there's only 3, I think.
They can still change that.
Yeah, they could change it. They did with Harry Potter. Remember those darn movies? They put those books into 2 movies.
Yeah.
5 years you'd have to wait for the darn movies. So it I'm glad I read it, but it was sort of anticlimactic to a degree. Because I didn't find out anything really new in it. And so I'm glad I read it, but it wasn't like overwhelming.
Didn't do too much.
Yeah, it didn't do much.
Okay.
So do you have anything that did much?
No, a lot of really disappointing books. I don't know if it's just I had downloaded a bunch of stuff that maybe was just too similar, and then, or what the deal really was, but it was more like, I read it, I can talk about it, I don't really want to talk about it. I'm currently still working on, I think I talked about it on a couple of the other episodes, I'm still working my way through the 7.5 Deaths of Evelyn Hardcastle by Stuart Turton. Once I finish it, I'll talk about it on the show, but this got put aside because I decided to give a graphic novel a try. My husband recommended The Watchmen by Alan Moore, and a whole bunch of his friends had recommended it, and it's just not for me.
So you cannot recommend it.
I can't recommend it. He has the movie, and I'd wanted to watch the movie because I hadn't seen it. And he told me that, he stole my line. He said, before you watch the movie, you have to read the comics. which usually I say you have to read the book.
Right.
But so I was like, well, fine. So then we had to, of course, it's in a box somewhere. So then you had to go track it down. So I felt it was like waiting for this forever. And it was like all I wanted to do was watch this 2-hour movie. And this is turning into like a month-long thing. So I finally read it. Yeah, I've read other graphic novels and I've really liked them, but this one just not my cup of tea. And
Was he disappointed?
well, he's kind of realized that there are just certain things where he will really, really like them.
And you
he'll
really
he'll
won't?
think that I'm really going to like it, so he'll want to watch it with me. And then, or read, he'll be like, read this, or watch this TV show, you'll like it. And then he realizes he's the only one laughing. And he's like, nope. So, but I mean, I'm glad I did read it. It's one of those things now that I understand what, him and his friends, or if anybody mentions it, talk about. But I mean, I feel like it was kind of hyped up for me, and then it kind of fell flat. So, yeah. So it was, I mean, it was very well, like, drawn. And I mean, it was very well drawn, but a little too graphic for me for a graphic novel. Ha ha ha. Again, mature content, but just a little too graphic, and I didn't really like how it ended. I didn't even really say anything. I just set it back on his pillow on his side of the bed and was like, he'll just know I finished it.
And you'll also know that there's no comment.
He's like, there was no discussion. So, but I mean, he's always been more of a graphic novel guy or comic book guy than I ever was. So,
Yeah.
give me a long, old novel give me a doorstop book and I'll be happy.
Well, I always say that when you run into a series of so-so books, it's time to go back to the classics. And so I read 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 Agatha Christie's. They had a sale on Agatha Christie's years and years ago.
Yeah.
And so I downloaded a whole
Yeah.
ton of them on my Kindle. And so I read After the Funeral, Dead Man's Mirror, Lord Edgware Dies, 3-Act Tragedy, Evil Under the Sun, and Death on the Nile.
Okay.
And Hercule Poirot is the
Yep.
detective.
Yep.
And they're great books. And, I have to say, I don't know that I'd want to be friends with Agatha Christie because she just has way too many ways people die.
Well, there's a reason she's called the Queen of Murder.
Yeah.
But I mean, even if you look at her own life, she pulled that disappearing act where she left her husband and everybody thought she'd been kidnapped and was looking for her, and she was just like, what?
Vacation.
She just left.
Yes.
She just wanted to left, and so she just went and stayed at this hotel and eventually turned back up. But everybody thought her husband had killed her.
Imagine that. She also worked during World War II. She was dispensing. She worked with poisons and stuff, and so I mean, the woman really knows what she's talking about.
Yeah.
But it's interesting to me how she could put together a good story. And I mean, she's got people poisoned. She's got people thrown off roofs. She's got people, shot. She's got people. I mean, pick a way to kill somebody, and Agatha Christie's probably done it.
Yeah.
I remember my dad used to always, when my mom would read all these mysteries, he'd always look at her and figure she was trying to find the perfect way to take him out.
Yeah. She didn't, by the way.
No, she did not. Although she might have been tempted. But
Well, I think we all are sometimes.
That's true. So, anything else that I did read there's an author named Elizabeth Peters.
Yes.
And she does the Amelia Peabody books.
Yep.
And also she writes the Vicki Bliss series.
I love Vicki Bliss.
I love Vicki Bliss.
I love Vicki Bliss.
Oh, yeah. So I reread the last two in that series,
okay.
The Night Train to Memphis and The Laughter of Dead Kings. And,
yeah.
And, but I really like Vicki Bliss because she's got a PhD in, like medieval jewelry or some crazy thing.
Medieval something.
Yeah, and she works at a museum in Munich, and her boss Herr Schmidt is this little short guy. He's sort of, I think, must look like Saint Nick.
That's what they say. Yeah, I think it sounds like he looks like Santa Claus. Yeah.
And he and Vicky is Sherlock Holmes and Watson, and he's Sherlock and she's Watson, and she thinks she's Sherlock and he's Watson. And so
Yeah.
they are constantly kind of in turmoil. And then there's the love interest with this fellow who is a thief.
The thief. I can't remember his name though.
I'm drawing a blank on
I
his name.
feel like it's a John or a Jack.
John. It is John.
Haha, I win.
Yep, no, it's John. But she meets him in the first book, and there's 6 books, and so it's kind of an ongoing,
Yeah.
weaving relationship, and they're great books.
They are. They don't write books like that anymore.
And Elizabeth Peters is one of her pen names, but she actually had a doctorate in Egyptology. And so when she writes about the Amelia Peabody books, she really knows what she's talking about. But she also wrote under the name of Barbara Michaels.
Oh, okay.
And I don't know if you ever read, but my very favorite Barbara Michaels is Amy Come Home.
I've heard everybody talk about it, but I haven't read it.
Oh my gosh.
If you have a copy, give it to me. Good. Several.
I have
That
several
doesn't
copies,
surprise
probably.
me. I mean, well, I'm not one to talk. I have like 3 copies of the Harry Potter series because I have mine, we have Tom's, and then I bought a brand new set at Black Friday for Alex when he's finally old enough to read Harry Potter. Now I know that's going to be like 8 years, but I did because that's the kind of parent I am.
And he should have his own books.
Yes. Well, mine are falling apart. They've been read so many times. Like my paperback copy, you go like this and half of the chapters fall out. Tom's, on the other hand, are still
Perfect.
pretty pristine, which is good. But that is going to do it for us this week. So we will see you next time.